causes the process of political conversion? Some people call it red pilling, but it's the idea that you have been a lifelong leftist and Democrat, and then you begin to see the light. Well, there's a remarkable article about this written by a guy named Lee Leibovitz. It's called The Turn. It appears in Tablet magazine. You can look it up. I recommend the full article. But he begins by talking about how when he was a young guy, he says, he believed the truth and justice kind of point you to the left. He says, if you're a caring human being, you want to help the less fortunate, you can't help them all the way, but you'd like to help them at least some of the way. And he goes, and how else do you do that if you're not on the left, if you're not some kind of a Democrat? And he goes, besides, even if the Democrats are doing some things that are wrong or that fall short, he goes, on the other side of these horrible conservatives, and they just don't care. And so this guy, Lee Leibovitz, was sort of raised and marinated in this kind of doctrine. He says, we felt we were on the right side of history. We always felt that the future belongs to us. And he goes, this pathway took me to a lot of success. He goes, I was a young socialist. I went to Columbia University. And he says, not only did I have this kind of intellectual sense that I was the sophisticated one, the intelligent one, but I got all kinds of social benefits. He's like, I was invited to all kinds of dinner parties on the Upper West Side. He said, I would meet all kinds of prominent figures on the left, Salman Rushdie, Susan Sontag. So this sense of belonging, it's the social benefit of belonging to a left which dominates our culture. And then he says, however, that for a lot of people, and happens to him, he undergoes what he calls the turn. And he says the turn doesn't happen overnight. He goes, it starts with a kind of twitch and then a doubt. And then he says, quote, a gnawing sense of panic. And then he says, suddenly you feel like you're politically homeless because you begin to question things that you previously took for granted. And the moment you start questioning them out loud, your own friends begin to attack you and desert you and ignore you. So you begin to feel like a political pariah. Why? Because you realize that the left, your own team, is actually very intolerant, and that intolerance doesn't become obvious at the beginning. So the turn is produced, he says, by a sense of contradiction. He goes, you're for free speech, and you suddenly realize that many people on the left don't like free speech. He goes, you raise the question that, wait a minute, are these lockdowns and school closures good for people who are the most marginalized in our society? Aren't they hurt the most? And then people give you these dirty looks. And so right away you begin to question, wait a minute, do they care about these people as much as they claim to? And then you raise the question, wait a minute, if you're trying to help people who are trying to get a start in life, does it really help to go to Hispanic stores and black stores and in the name of Antifa or social justice, burn them down? So, pull the inhabitants out of cars and start threatening them and trashing them. He goes, again, when you raise these questions, you begin to get attacked. And he says it's the attack generally gives you a very strange feeling, which you normally don't have as an adult. He goes, you almost have to go back to when you were in junior high school and some bully was like threatening you on the playground and you felt that sense of awkwardness and humiliation and fear. And he says, and then it's a critical moment because you have to decide what to do. Are you going to sort of crawl back into the leftist camp and just be essentially a humiliated person who says, listen, I better shut up, I better go along? Or are you going to make the turn and say, all right, you know what? I'm out of here. And he says, this is the key, because when you get out of here, even though you're given all these labels, people will say things like, oh, you're a racist and you're anti-science and you're this and you're that. He goes, but you know what? He goes, if you can summon up the courage to break with the left, to reject even the social benefits that come with belonging on the left, and you begin to push your way away from the left, he goes, I'm not quoting him, he says, this story will have a happy ending. He goes, the freedom that you feel on the other side is so real, it's physical. And he has a beautiful analogy. He goes, it's like emerging from a long stretch underwater and taking that first deep breath in the cool afternoon air. So in other words, it's liberating. And he goes, listen, don't be held back. Don't say things like, well, you know what? The left was the party of there were leftists who went and fought for civil rights in 1962. Oh, well, the FDR guys was the party of unions in the 1930s. He goes, who cares what the left did 70 years ago or 40 years ago? We are living with the left today, and these people are a danger. They are a menace. And so he says, listen, they're going to call you all kinds of names, but who cares? You're a fascist. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're anti-science, blah, blah, blah. He goes, the real word to describe you, he says, is you're free.